Hi there, I'm McDermott. The Bioshock series is full of interesting ideas, characters, storylines, so much in fact entire books have been written about it. What I'm going to be focusing on in this video is how Bioshock, Bioshock 2 and Bioshock Infinite approach player choice in the narrative to varying levels of success. Oh, it is impossible to discuss this without spoiling the story of all three games. With that in mind, let's dive into the complex and brilliant world of Bioshock. We start with the first entry in the series and the choice to either harvest or rescue a little sister. This moment is powerful. In front of me is a terrified, deformed child who never asked to be turned into an abomination. Tannenbaum begs for mercy, saying she will make it worth my while somehow, but she is the one responsible for what they've become, making her promise suspicious. Atlas encourages me to harvest the little sister in order to extract as much Adam as possible. He devalues the life of the little sister, calling her Tannenbaum's Frankenstein, and that she is nothing compared to the well-being of my character, Atlas, and his family. Tannenbaum and Atlas play the role of devil and angel on my shoulder, justifying whatever decision I go with. The way this choice is presented is excellent. It forces me to look deep inside at what values I hold dear. Whatever I decide, Tannenbaum and Atlas will react accordingly with praise or condemnation. Unfortunately, I am asked to make this choice many more times over the course of the game, and its initial impact is diminished. It becomes just another gameplay mechanic, and at some point I may just choose the opposite to see what happens. How much more Adam will I get for harvesting them? What does it look like if I rescue them? This once morally powerful decision can be reduced to curiosity. The outcome of my choice from a narrative perspective is multiple endings. Rescue all the little sisters and I'm treated to an almost evangelical ending. The little sisters have a fulfilling life involving education, marriage and family. They're also at my side on my deathbed. Harvesting all the little sisters paints me as a malevolent being bent on world domination. Tannenbaum denounces me for what I have done, and the final shot implies I'm going to try to take over the world with nuclear weapons. The third ending is if I harvest and save little sisters. It is still the evil ending cinematic, but Tannenbaum isn't quite as angry with me, more disappointed. Tone is different, but same outcome. So I'm either cookie cutter holy, over the top comic book villain, or slightly ruthlessly evil. It doesn't feel right. A disconnect is present between the well-crafted, ambiguous nature of the initial choice, which carries over, granted in an increasingly diminished fashion, to all other choices, and the final cinematic. It isn't a true representation of the moral dilemma I faced. Instead, the game tells me there is a clear good choice and a bad choice, but it isn't that simple. It also doesn't help that at a certain point I was numb to the decisions I was making. Barely any thought was put into harvesting or rescuing little sisters by the end, it was just automatic. The power of the choice is gone, it feels hollow, as does the final cinematic. A few months after Bioshock's release, Ken Levine, the game's creative director, would speak about this. It was never my intention to do two endings for the game. It sort of came very late, and it was something that was requested by somebody up the food chain from me. Instead, he would prefer that by the time you get to the ending of that choice path, you have a sense of your impact on the world through lots of little permutations rather than like a giant ending piece. I find this fascinating because 6 years later, Bioshock Infinite will let players do just that. Make choices which feel important but don't alter the ending. As for player input affecting the outcome of the first Bioshock, it doesn't really work. But when we take a step back and look at the theme of choice being an illusion, things get quite interesting. Narratively speaking, Jack, and in turn the player, never had a choice about the events of Rapture. The fate of every character was predetermined. Sure, I can choose what to do with the little sisters, but other than the final cinematic, nothing changes. Andrew Ryan is killed with a golf stick by Jack. Fontaine is drained by the Little Sisters and Rapture is still in ruin. On top of that, the game breaks the fourth wall by letting me know every objective I completed was done because someone told me to do it. This is, after all, a video game. Go here, pick up that, return to this place.
Do kindly head to Ryan's office and kill the son of a bitch.
After Bioshock points out how little choice I have, does anything change? Nope. Instead of Atlas telling me where to go and what to do, Tannenbaum is doing so. I'm still following orders, but from a different person, while being subjected to one overplayed video game trope after another. Fetch quest, escort mission, and a great big final boss. Ken Levine later spoke about the lack of change in gameplay after the earth-shattering moment with Andrew Ryan. It never occurred to me that this would be an issue with people, that by having this thing which happens in the narrative space, you'd expect this giant change in the gameplay space. I think that looking back on it, that's something that I'd want to give a huge amount of thought to. But it was more like, I think this would be a great commentary on games and the world of Bioshock as well. I didn't realise that it would change expectations. It is easy to understand the oversight considering the hectic world of AAA development. However, imagine if they had the foresight to change the gameplay to reflect the narrative and also have just one ending befitting of that change. Bioshock is already a terrific game, but it could have been a masterpiece. Bioshock 2 goes in a different direction by offering even more endings and choices. On top of harvesting or rescuing Little Sisters, the fate of 3 different characters of varying morality are in my hands, and the build to making each of those choices is reminiscent of the first helpless Little Sister. I am introduced to Grace Holloway, a former jazz singer who spoke out against Andrew Ryan after realising her home in Rapture was just as bad as any slum on the surface. This led to her getting blacklisted and her lover James vanishing. Around the same time, she met Sophia Lamb, the game's main antagonist, who was a psychiatrist preaching solidarity and leading a revolution against Ryan. Grace was one of her earliest supporters, and when Lamb was jailed by Ryan, she took care of Lamb's daughter Eleanor, whom she grew to love. Unfortunately, Eleanor, just like James, vanished. Next time she saw Eleanor, she was hand in hand with my character, one of the first Big Daddy's, Subject Delta. Her rage is understandable as she tries everything possible to kill me with the help of quite a few splicers because she thinks Subject Delta stole Eleanor away from her, which is not true. Delta, just like Eleanor, is a victim. He was turned into a Big Daddy against his will. After fighting past all the splicers in Pauper's Drop and reaching Grace's room where she has the key I needed, a choice is presented, although not before she encourages me to finish the job. So do I kill or let her live? This is a great moment. By now I viewed her as a sympathetic character whose burdens I understand. However, she was trying to kill me for the last 45 minutes. There is a great build to this choice, adding weight to it. If I kill her, then that's the end of it. On I march. If I spare her, she will reconsider her attitude towards Big Daddies, offer some assistance with security bots, call off a group of splicers she had set as a trap, and leave me ammo and health drops a couple of times during the game, perhaps encouraging me to also show mercy for the other characters. And boy, that is hard with Stanley Poole, who is the real reason why Eleanor was taken from Grace. As a spy for Andrew Ryan, he was instrumental in the sentencing of Sophia Lamb after infiltrating her inner circles. With the Lamb in jail, Stanley was put in charge of Dionysus Park, a haven of Lambs. The power went to his head and he kept throwing lavish parties at Lamb's expense. Eleanor confronted him, threatening to tell Lamb. In return, Stanley sold Eleanor into the Little Sister orphanage. When word got round that Lamb had escaped, Stanley was terrified she would find out about his excessive spending. Someone from Dionysus Park was bound to tell her, so he flooded the place with everyone locked inside. However, when Subject Delta drains it, Little Sisters start harvesting the dead bodies for Adam, which also contains their memories. If Lamb gets her hands on it, she will know all about Stanley's actions. Terrified, he locks himself in a control room for the train, refusing to let Delta pass until all the little sisters inside are taken care of. When the deed is done, Lamb reveals she knew what Stanley had done all along but has forgiven him because if it wasn't for Eleanor becoming a little sister, then Lamb wouldn't be able to pursue her utopian project. She opens the door to the control room while also letting me know Stanley, at the behest of Andrew Ryan, is the reason for Delta being incarcerated and becoming a big daddy. So Stanley had a part in Eleanor becoming a little sister, turning my character into one of the first big daddies, and was directly responsible for killing an entire community out of pure cowardice. There he stands, trembling in fear, pleading for mercy. Here is how I justified my decision to kill him. I think the man is a monster, willing to do whatever it takes to silence innocent people. Even Andrew Ryan and Fontaine never drowned an entire helpless community. I'm sure some players took pity on this shell of a man and let him live on with his guilt, knowing that he cannot cause any more harm with Lamb aware of his misdeeds. Not me. That was quite ruthless. I wonder what it says about me. Killing or sparing him has no effect on the gameplay, unlike Grace Holloway, but it does help shape the ending. The third and final character whose fate I decide is Gil Alexander, a scientist who was instrumental in turning my character into a big daddy, assisted in bonding Eleanor to him, and became heavily involved in Lamb's utopian project. In fact, Gil volunteered as the first test subject. They attempted to infuse him with all the memories and brilliance of the greatest minds of Rapture through massive doses of Adam. The experiment failed and Gil physically mutates while also going insane. Before going completely mad, he records messages giving instructions how to get into the inner areas of Fontaine Futuristics, where both he and the key to the next area are. He also begs to be killed by whoever makes it that far. While pre-recorded messages found offer guidance, Gil in his current mad form, referring to himself as Alex the Great, is setting up traps trying to stop me. When I do get to Gil, a choice is presented: kill or let live. There are plenty of reasons for him to suffer, and in his current state, that is exactly what is happening. He begs to be put out of his misery while repenting for his sins. This is an exceptional ambiguous choice and my favourite in the series. What Gil did during his time in Rapture was morally wrong, but he has descended into madness and misery, effectively paying for his actions. Killing him puts an end to that. Letting him live forces him to continue his torment. Once again, I am asked to look inside myself. What values do I hold dear? What feels justified? Showing mercy towards the apologetic abomination or enacting vengeance for what he did to Delta and Eleanor? Whether I choose to kill or spare him, like Stanley, it has no effect on the gameplay but does impact the ending. What I like about the decision to kill or spare Grace, Stanley and Gil is how an argument could be made to justify whatever action taken. I also admire the build to each final encounter. Throughout the level, more and more information is uncovered, shedding light on the background of the characters and why they are in their predicament. Now to look at how these morally ambiguous decisions, as well as how I treated the little sisters, affects the ending. It is rather complex. First thing to be determined is whether Sophia Lamb lives or dies. If I rescued all the little sisters and spared at least one of the three characters, Sophia Lamb lives. If I rescued and harvested, or just harvested the little sisters, but spared all the characters, Lamb also lives. So if I'm a saviour for the little sisters, then I am afforded killing a couple of characters. If I'm not considerate towards the little sisters, without showing mercy in all other aspects of the game, Lamb will die. The game does a good job of tracking how merciful I am, and that determines the fate of the game's main antagonist. As for the final cinematic, this time there are 3 instead of 2. Rescue all little sisters, good ending. Harvest all little sisters, bad ending. Same as before, but what is new is the neutral ending. If I harvested and rescued at least one little sister, a final choice is presented. I'm still painted as a villain, but now I have a chance of redemption by letting Eleanor be free and independent for the first time in her life. Or I can save myself and live on in her memories through the Adam she can harvest from me. Choosing sacrifice will lead to the neutral ending cinematic, and saving myself yields the bad ending. It is a final chance to repent for the sin of harvesting even one little sister, something that was not an option in the first game. There is certainly a lot going on behind the scenes during the ending of Bioshock 2, and it does a better job of representing the decisions I made over the course of the game. It is no longer black and white, there is a little grey thrown in. Although I don't like how it puts my treatment of the little sisters as the biggest deciding factor in what ending cinematic I get, because at a certain point, like with Bioshock 1, choosing to harvest or rescue them loses value. There is a really cool moment where Eleanor, now as a big sister, mimics what I was doing with the little sisters. I can witness her either harvest or rescue them for Adam. It holds up a mirror to my actions, just a pity that particular choice lost value after making it 20 plus times. On the other side, the moral dilemma about what to do with the three characters is far more interesting. They all have a great build to a one-time choice. Whatever I decide can be justified, and all that affects at the end of the game is whether Sophia Lamb lives or dies. I would have preferred if the bigger choices had a more profound effect on the ending. Overall, because Bioshock 2 embraces player choice, its closing moments are more befitting of my decisions, something creative director Jordan Thomas spoke about. The focus here is on choice, in that the player is defined by the moment in which he is granted free will this time around, very much in contrast with the original. Now we move on to Bioshock Infinite, a whole new setting, new characters, and a new approach to player choice. 4 choices are directly asked of me. Throw the ball at the couple or the racist announcer, cage or bird, hold up the clerk or demand a ticket, and kill or spare Slate. All of these have no effect on the ending, a complete reversal of the previous 2 games. Choosing what brooch Elizabeth wears is as simple as it sounds. She puts it on and that's the end of it. Throwing the ball at the presenter instead of the couple means they will reward me later on with a piece of gear. This is similar to sparing Grace Holloway in Bioshock 2. In both cases, I'm given a slight advantage when it comes to gameplay. The other timed choice is whether to draw my weapon or to once again demand tickets from this clerk, who can be overheard muttering on the phone with someone about Booker and Elizabeth. Drawing my weapon makes the clerk put up his hands and then a firefight breaks out. After killing everyone, Elizabeth is horrified by my actions. Booker then explains the reason for drawing first and she accepts it, even offering to wipe away some blood. Demanding tickets gives the clerk an opportunity to get a jump on Booker. Again, a firefight breaks out, Elizabeth is horrified, Booker consoles her, and then she helps with his wounds. Same as before, except now Booker has a bandage on his hand for the rest of the playthrough, which plays no part in the narrative. Events are slightly different, but same conclusion. The meatiest choice in the game bears a striking resemblance to the choices in Bioshock 2. Kill or spare Slate, the man I chased throughout an entire level to get a vigor. Slate sheds more light on Comstock's past, while also putting a wall of men in the way of Booker, his former ally in the war. What is worth noting is that unlike Bioshock 2, there wasn't much of an effort to make him a sympathetic character. By the time this moment comes around, the only details about Slate I knew for sure is that he really doesn't like Comstock and he used to fight alongside Booker. Compared to the first little sister, Grace, Stanley and Gil, choosing what to do with Slate doesn't feel nearly as important. As for the outcome of the decision made, killing him results in Elizabeth mentioning how it was a mercy killing, as Comstock's men were bound to find him and do much worse. Let him live and Elizabeth seems pleased, but Booker is quick to point out Comstock's men will find him anyway. Sparing him was no act of mercy. The game is overtly saying killing Slate is the noble thing to do. If I spare him, later on he can be found lobotomized in a cell. A gun is on the table and there is a subtle option to mercy kill him this time around. So whatever choice I make, Slate either ends up physically dead or brain dead. Not much of a difference. And that best sums up all of the choices in Bioshock Infinite. No matter what I do, not much of a difference is made. Although, it's not a bad thing. Ken Levine gave an interesting explanation as to why they went with this approach. I'm more interested in watching that moment and the emotional reaction they have at that moment of choice than I am going to the screen and tracking some morality number as time goes on. The choices don't matter in the grand scheme of things, but feel like they do in the moment. I find this rather interesting. It can be argued this is hollow, but I would say it does an excellent job of tying into the illusion of choice theme. Booker is destined to kill Comstock and also die himself because the game is scripted that way, and the player cannot stop it. Broach or cage, kill or spare, it doesn't matter. The ending is the culmination of the idea that the destination is predetermined. I can go left or right multiple times, but I will always get to the same place. My choices don't change the narrative, but they do shape who I am when I get there. Instead of the game telling me if I am good or evil with the final cinematic, it is up to me to figure it out. While the way choice is handled would not work in most games, I believe it works quite well for Infinite. In terms of how successful each game is at handling player choice in the narrative, what the first game does is offer a binary ending which feels disappointing. While it provides great commentary on the lack of player choice in a linear narrative game, it still lets the player decide the ending. So players don't have a choice, but they do. Kind of messy. It wasn't until Bioshock Infinite that this idea is fully realised. No matter what the player chooses, the overall outcome is the same, in keeping with the game's narrative, as well as its theme of choice being an illusion. What Bioshock 1 started, Infinite finished. As for Bioshock 2, it embraced player choice and allowed them to have a bigger say over the outcome of the story. While deciding what to do with Little Sisters once again lost value over time, what it does really well is the build to deciding the fate of those three characters. It is in-depth and layered with moral ambiguity, making them feel like the most important choices in the series. These are remarkable games with a lot to talk about. I hope I've done them justice while covering a part that I find really interesting. Thank you for watching. I'm going to go play more Bioshock. Until next time, take care.